Just a few estate papers, Mark. Nothing major. Craig slid the folder across Dad's old kitchen table, the same table where we'd eaten cereal before school for 15 years. I'm Mark Jensen, 48, and I audit financial records for a living. Numbers don't lie to me, people do. Craig was already reaching for his keys. You trust me, right? I mean, I handled Dad's hospice stuff while you were traveling for work. The guilt hit exactly where he aimed it. I'd been in Detroit auditing a pharmaceutical merger when Dad took his final breath. Craig had been there, holding his hand. I signed the papers without reading them. My forensic training screamed at me to stop. Review every line, cross-X-read every clause, but grief makes you stupid. 3 weeks later, the mail arrived. Estate asset transfer summary, legal letterhead, Craig's attorney. Every major asset had been transferred exclusively to Craig Michael Jensen. The house in Hyde Park, Dad's stock portfolio, the antique car collection he spent weekends restoring, even the retirement fund Dad had saved for 30 years. Total value, $1,200,000, 0 cent. My share, nothing. I sat in my empty apartment, staring at the papers. Rain drummed against the windows like fingers tapping impatiently. Craig answered on the first ring. Hey Mark, what's up? Got the estate summary? Silence. Then, oh, that. Yeah, the lawyer said it was cleaner this way. Avoids probate delays. Everything's in your name. Dad would have wanted me to handle it. You know how he worried about your travel schedule. The lie came so easily, like he'd practiced it. We should talk. Sure. Tomorrow night? I've got a showing in Westchester. I'd known Craig for 51 years. He was 3 years older, 6 inches taller, and had been selling houses since college. People trusted his smile, his firm handshake, his way of making complicated things sound simple. The next evening I drove to his McMansion in Madeira, all glass and angles, the kind of house that screams success to anyone driving by. Craig poured me whiskey, Dad's favorite brand, Macallan 18. Look, I get why you're upset, he said, settling into his leather chair. But someone had to make decisions. The estate was complicated. At that complicated, you were traveling, I was here. Dad knew I understood real estate, investments, all that stuff. I took a sip. The whiskey burned. He left a will, which appointed me as executor. This just streamlined things. You know what the worst part was? He actually believed his own justification, like taking everything was some kind of favor to Dad's memory. The car collection alone is worth 300 grand. Craig shrugged. Dad and I spent every Saturday in that garage. You never showed interest. Because I was working 2 jobs through college. Ancient history, Mark. I finished my whiskey. Set the glass down carefully. Craig leaned forward. Here's the thing. I'm not the enemy. We're family. I'll take care of you when I sell some assets. You know that. I stood to leave. Craig followed me to the door. You're really mad about this? I turned, looked him straight in the eye. Hope it's worth it. That night, I sat in my car outside his house for 20 minutes, watching him move around inside. Living room light, kitchen, upstairs bedroom. He'd stolen everything Dad worked for. Everything Dad wanted us to share. Everything. Maybe I should have seen it coming. Craig had always been the golden child, star athlete in high school, prom king, the son who stayed local, who visited every Sunday. I'd been the bookworm, the numbers guy, the one who left Cincinnati for college and came back with spreadsheets instead of stories. But Dad had loved us both. I drove home through empty streets. No radio, no music, just the sound of tires on wet asphalt. By the time I reached my apartment, one thing was crystal clear. This wasn't over. Grief does something strange to a forensic auditor. It turns emotions into spreadsheets, betrayal into data points, rage into research. The morning after my conversation with Craig, I cleared my dining room table, laid out every document from Dad's estate. Bank statements, insurance policies, property deeds, the mysterious papers I'd signed without reading. My coffee went cold as I worked. By noon, the first red flag appeared. The power of attorney form I'd signed wasn't just for estate distribution. It granted Craig authority over all financial decisions, retroactively, including Dad's final 6 months. I called Hamilton County Records Office. I need copies of all probate filings for Robert Jensen, deceased March 15th. Are you an interested party? I'm his son. 3 hours later, I had the files. Craig had submitted documents I'd never seen: trust formations, asset reclassifications, transfer authorizations dated weeks before Dad died. You know what really caught my attention? The secondary attorney. Craig had mentioned his regular lawyer handled the estate, but half these documents came from Brennan and Associates, a firm I'd never heard of. I pulled their business registration, founded 6 months ago, principal attorney, Michael Brennan, former public defender, 3 disciplinary actions on his bar record. Interesting. That evening, I called an old colleague. Sandra Morales and I had worked together on municipal fraud cases back when I freelanced for the state attorney's office. Mark Jensen. Haven't heard from you in years. I need a favor, Sandra. Probate court access. What kind of access? The unofficial kind. We met at a coffee shop near the courthouse. Sandra worked in the probate clerk's office now. Quiet job, good benefits, access to every filing in Hamilton County. I showed her Craig's document. Sandra's expression shifted. This trust structure. I've seen it before. What do you mean? Brennan Associates. 3 estates this year used the exact same formation. All had, she paused, irregularities. How kind of irregularities? Beneficiary challenges, IRS audits. One is under criminal investigation. Sandra pulled up records on her laptop. Look at this. The Westfield estate. Old man dies, son submits trust transfer. 6 months later, the IRS finds phantom deductions and inflated asset values. The pattern was clear. Brennan specialized in estate manipulation. Can you get me the full Westfield file? I would be. Off the record. Sandra nodded. Give me 2 days. I spent those 2 days pulling public records on Craig's business, real estate transactions, business loans, credit reports. What I found made my blood run cold. 3 months ago, Craig had taken out a $400,000 0-cents bridge loan from Merchant Capital. Collateral, Dad's estate assets. The same assets that legally belong to him now. But here's the interesting part. The appraisal Craig submitted valued the estate at $1,800,000, 0 cents. The actual estate summary I'd received listed $1,200,000, 0 cents. Craig had inflated values to secure a larger loan. Sandra called on Thursday. Meet me at the same place. Bring cash for parking. This time she brought a thick folder. The Westfield case file, and Mark, you didn't get this from me. I read it over lunch. The parallels were stunning. Rushed paperwork during family grief, powers of attorney disguised as simple estate forms, a shadow trust created through Brennan's office. But the Westfield case had an additional layer. The son had hired an accountant, Lisa Chen from Meridian Financial, to handle estate tax filings. She'd unknowingly filed fraudulent deductions based on the manipulated trust structure. When the IRS audited, Lisa faced professional liability. Her CPA license was suspended. She lost everything defending herself. I pulled out my phone, searched for Craig's business filings, his accountant Lisa Chen, Meridian Financial. The same Lisa Chen. Sandra, I need one more favor. You're pushing it, Mark. Check if there are any liens against Craig's current business properties. She made a call, waited, Scribbled notes. 3 liens filed last month. Merchant Capital is foreclosing on 2 of his rental properties. Missed payments. He's also behind on the bridge loan. So Craig wasn't just a thief. He was a desperate thief. I drove home with everything clicking into place. Craig hadn't just stolen Dad's estate. He'd leveraged it to cover his failing business. Now he was hemorrhaging money and using an accountant who was already under IRS scrutiny. That night, I sat in my apartment with all the evidence spread before me. Craig had forged ahead thinking I'd never fight back. The quiet brother. The numbers guy who lived in corporate cubicles. He'd forgotten one crucial detail. I spent 15 years auditing corporate fraud. I knew how these schemes unraveled. I knew where they left fingerprints. And I knew exactly how much prison time financial fraud carried. I opened my laptop and began typing the first of several anonymous tips to the appropriate authorities. Each one would arrive precisely when Craig was most vulnerable. He'd said Dad would have wanted him to handle everything. Time to find out what Dad would have wanted for a son who stole from his own family. The game wasn't over. It was just beginning. I've always believed in timing. In forensic auditing, you don't blow the whistle on day one. You wait. You gather evidence. You let the target get comfortable with their fraud. Then you strike when it hurts most. My first anonymous tip went to the IRS on a Monday morning. Simple email. Untraceable account. Estate tax fraud Robert Jensen case. Hamilton County. Check asset valuations against bridge loan appraisals. No signature. No name. Just facts. By Wednesday, I'd filed my probate court challenge. The statute was clear. Beneficiaries had 6 months to contest estate fraud based on fraudulent misapprehension during mourning. I had 2 months left. My petition was surgical. No emotional appeals. No family drama. Just documentation. The power of attorney Craig had disguised as estate papers. The shadow trust formation. The timeline of Dad's signature dates. I requested handwriting analysis on every document. You know what the beautiful thing about being a forensic auditor is? I speak fluent paper trail. Every transaction leaves tracks. Every forged signature has tells. Every lie creates inconsistencies that multiply like cancer. I spent evenings reconstructing Craig's financial web, his business loans, his property leveraging, his cash flow statements. What I found was a house of cards held together with criminal activity. The bridge loan application listed Dad's '67 Mustang at $85,000, 0 cents. Dad's insurance papers valued it at $45,000, 0 cents. That's not an appraisal error. That's fraud. Craig had inflated every asset value, the house, the stocks, even Dad's vintage drafting table. On Friday, I received a call. This is Michael Brennan. I think we should talk. Craig's secondary attorney, the one forming questionable trusts. I don't think we have anything to discuss, Mr. Brennan. Actually, we do. I understand you filed some concerns about your father's estate. Concerns is one word for it. Pause. Perhaps we could meet. I may have information you'd find interesting. We met at a neutral location, generic office building. Brennan looked like a man who hadn't slept well in weeks. Your brother asked me to create that trust structure, he said immediately. I want that on record. Why tell me? Because I'm about to lose my license anyway. The Westfield case is going to trial. They found irregularities in my filings. I waited, let him talk. Craig approached me 6 months ago. Said he needed to protect estate assets from potential medical debt. Standard elder care planning. But that's not what you created. No. He wanted something more flexible, something that would allow him full control after your father's death. Brennan pulled out a folder. These are copies of every document Craig signed, including some he probably doesn't want you to see. Inside were additional trust amendments, dated after Dad's death, with Dad's signature. I kept my expression neutral. My father died March 15th. Yes. This amendment is dated March 22nd. Yes, with his signature. Brennan nodded. That's why I'm here. I never signed off on that particular document. Craig submitted it directly to probate court. Posthumous forgery. Felony fraud. Craig had just graduated from estate manipulation to straight-up crime. What do you want in exchange for this information? Immunity. When this goes to trial, I'll testify about the trust structure, about the timeline, about how your brother pressured me. And if I don't take this deal, then we're both going down with him. I took the documents. I'll be in touch. That weekend, I called Sandra. I need to amend my probate filing. Emergency motion. What kind of emergency? Felony forgery. Craig's world started crumbling the following Tuesday. I was having lunch when my phone rang. Unknown number. Mark? This is Lisa Chen, the accountant. Her voice was shaking. Craig gave me some papers to file amended tax returns, but the IRS just called. They're auditing everything. They want to see all estate documents. And? The numbers don't match. Nothing matches. Craig told me your father restructured everything before he died, but these dates, Mark, some of these signatures are from after the funeral. Did you tell the IRS? Nothing yet, but they're coming in tomorrow. What am I supposed to say? Tell them the truth. Silence. Craig says you're trying to steal everything, that you're jealous because Dad left him in charge. What do you think, Lisa? Another pause. I think Craig lied to both of us. That evening, Craig called me for the first time since our whiskey conversation. Mark, we need to talk. There's been some misunderstanding with the estate. No misunderstanding on my end. Look, maybe I was too hasty. Maybe we can work something out. Split things more evenly. Too late for negotiations. I'm not interested. The IRS is sniffing around. If this becomes public, it hurts both of us. Just me? There might be some paperwork issues. But we can fix this. Together. I heard desperation creeping into his voice. The confident salesman facade was cracking. Hope it's worth it, Craig. I hung up. Over the next week, Sandra kept me updated. Craig had missed his bridge loan payment. Merchant Capital issued a demand notice. His business checking account was frozen pending the IRS audit. He tried taking out an emergency loan using one of his rental properties as collateral, the same property he'd already leveraged for the original bridge loan, double collateralization, another felony. By month's end, Craig was making panicked calls to Lisa every day, asking about audit timelines, requesting document alterations, suggesting she might have misread certain conversations. Each call was another nail in his legal coffin. I sat in my apartment every evening, tracking his financial unraveling like a disease spreading through a balance sheet. Craig had built his theft on lies. Now those lies were eating him alive. And the best part? I hadn't spoken to him once. Sometimes the most devastating revenge is simply letting the truth do its work. The probate court hearing was set for 9 a.m. on a Tuesday. I arrived early, sat in the back row, watched Craig enter with his lawyer. Not Brennan, but some expensive downtown firm he probably couldn't afford. He looked tired, older. His usual swagger reduced to nervous glances around the courtroom. Judge Margaret Hoffman called the case. Matter of Robert Jensen estate. Motion to contest asset transfers. My attorney presented the evidence methodically. The forged documents, the timeline inconsistencies, the signature analysis I'd commissioned. Handwriting experts don't lie. The posthumous signature on the trust amendment was clearly fabricated. Wrong pressure points, incorrect letter spacing. A dead man doesn't sign legal documents. Craig's lawyer tried damage control. Your Honor, this appears to be a family dispute over inheritance. My client was named executor, acting in good faith. Counselor, Judge Hoffman interrupted. Are you disputing the handwriting analysis? We request additional time to review. The signature is dated 1 week after Mr. Jensen's death. Unless your client believes in resurrection, we have a problem. You know what I loved about that moment? Craig had to sit there, silent, watching his lies dissected in public record. The judge admitted my motion, ordered a complete forensic review of all estate documents, froze all transferred assets pending investigation. Craig walked out without looking at me. That afternoon, the IRS made it official. Full audit. Craig's personal and business finances going back 5 years. Lisa called me at home that evening. She was crying. "Mark, they served me papers. The IRS says I'm liable for filing fraudulent returns. They're holding me responsible for Craig's whatever he did." "What exactly did you file?" "State tax returns based on the documents Craig gave me. Deductions for charitable contributions I never saw. Asset valuations that made no sense. He said you'd already approved everything. I never approved anything." "I know that now. God, how could I be so stupid?" Lisa had been collateral damage, another person Craig sacrificed to protect his scheme. "There's something else," she said. "The IRS agent asked about overseas accounts. Craig has money hidden in Cayman trusts. Money I never knew about. More fraud, more lies. The audit was going to destroy him." 2 days later, Sandra called. The local legal blog picked up the case. Hamilton County estate fraud rocks real estate community. It's all over Cincinnati's legal social media. Within hours, the story spread. Reddit, Facebook, LinkedIn. Someone had leaked the court filings to reporters. Craig's clients started calling off deals. His brokerage, Pinnacle Realty, suspended his license pending investigation. I watched it happen from my apartment. His business website went dark. His office phone forwarded to voicemail. 5 months of methodical planning, 3 months of careful execution. His reputation crumbling like cheap construction. 1 week later, the Hamilton County prosecutor filed charges: wire fraud, estate fraud, forgery, tax evasion. Craig made bail, barely. His house went up for sale. Distressed property, quick sale needed. His McMansion in Madeira, the one with all the glass and angles. I drove by on my way to work. Realtor's sign in the yard. Craig's car wasn't in the driveway. The formal probate hearing was scheduled for the following month. Judge Hoffman would decide how much of Dad's estate I'd recover. I didn't expect everything. Craig had already spent some assets. The bridge loan had consumed others. But I wanted him to face consequences for what he'd done. On the day of the final hearing, the courtroom was packed. Other families who'd worked with Brennan and Associates. IRS agents. Court reporters. Judge Hoffman reviewed our case methodically. The forged signatures, the fraudulent trust, the inflated appraisals. Then she looked directly at Craig. "Mr. Jensen, I've seen many cases of estate manipulation in my 20 years on this bench. What you did goes beyond greed. You exploited your brother's grief. You violated your father's trust. You forged documents in a dead man's name." Craig stared at his hands. "This court finds clear and convincing evidence of fraudulent misrepresentation. The trust transfers are null and void. The estate will be divided according to the original will." She paused. "Furthermore, I'm referring this case to the Attorney General for additional criminal investigation. Your abuse of fiduciary duty and exploitation of family trust demands prosecution to the full extent of the law. I recovered 60% of Dad's estate. Craig's legal fees and fraudulent spending had consumed the rest. The house where we'd grown up. Half the stock portfolio. 2 of Dad's antique cars. Not everything, but enough." As I left the courthouse, Craig stood by the parking meter, alone. His lawyer had already moved on to the next case. He looked at me, started to say something. I walked past him. Some words aren't worth the breath. 3 months later, the federal fraud trial began. I watched from the gallery as Craig was sentenced to 36 months in federal prison. Lisa Chen received probation. Brennan lost his law license permanently. Craig's real estate license was revoked. His business closed. His assets liquidated to pay legal debts. I never spoke to him again. Some bridges burn completely. 6 months after the trial, I drove to Dad's house. Mine now, according to probate court. But it would always be Dad's. The garage sat behind the house, weathered wood and flaking paint. I hadn't been inside since the funeral. The key still hung on the hook by the back door. Dad's old key ring. 4 decades of accumulated metal and memories. Inside, dust particles danced in afternoon light filtering through the windows. Dad's workbench, his tools, still hanging in perfect order, everything exactly as he'd left it. In the far corner, under a canvas tarp, sat the Model A Ford. I'd never fought Craig for this car. Not because I didn't want it, because it meant something different to me than market value. Every Saturday when I was 8, Dad had brought me out here, let me hand him wrenches, taught me the difference between earning something and buying it. Cars need patience, Mark, he'd said, just like people. I pulled off the tarp. The Ford was rougher than I remembered, rust spots along the fenders, missing headlight, torn upholstery. But the engine was solid. Dad's work. I spent the afternoon with my hands in grease and metal. Cleaned the carburetor, replaced spark plugs, changed fluids that had been sitting too long. No radio, no phone, just the quiet satisfaction of fixing something with your hands. As evening approached, I wiped oil from my fingers with Dad's old shop rag, still hung in the same spot after all these months. That's when I saw it. A sealed envelope tucked in the glove box. My name in Dad's careful handwriting. For Mark. I sat on Dad's old stool and opened it carefully. The letter was 1 page. Dad's voice in careful pen strokes. Mark, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and you found my hiding place. You always were good at finding things. I know Craig thinks differently, but you're the one who understands what matters. Not the money, not the house, the work itself. You got my head for details, my stubborn streak, my sense of right and wrong. I'm proud of who you became, the man who works quietly, who solves problems, who doesn't need applause to do the right thing. This car isn't worth much to anyone else, but it's got 40 years of our Saturday mornings in it. That's worth more than anything. Craig could sell. Take care of it. Take care of yourself. Love, Dad. P. The spare key is under the 3rd toolbox from the left. You'll need it. I read the letter twice, folded it carefully, slid it into my wallet next to my driver's license. The Model A would need months of work, new tires, engine rebuild, fresh paint. But I had time. I picked up the tools scattered around the bench, put them back in their proper places. Dad would have wanted that. The overhead light cast long shadows across the garage floor. 20 years of oil stains, 40 years of projects, 50 years of stories. I reached for the light switch, turned it off, pulled the garage door down, turned the key in the lock. Some things you keep, some things you lose, some things you fight for, and some things you just let be. I walked to my car without looking back. The house would sell eventually. The stocks would grow. Craig would serve his time and build some other life somewhere else. But Saturday mornings in an old garage with your father's tools, those stay with you forever. Some inheritances can't be stolen.